More than likely, if you're watching this video, it means you've applied for the program and now you're ready to either take the code challenge or to start preparing to take the code challenge. Please watch this video in its entirety. We're gonna walk through all the problems in the code challenge and how you can actually submit the code challenge so that you can get an accurate assessment on where you're at. Now, when we say assessment, that might sound scary, but remember, we're not trying to find the best coders. We're not trying to weed out those who are weak versus those who are strong. We're trying to get everybody who wants to as prepared as possible so that you're at a good spot when the program starts. So if you fail this time around when you submit, don't worry, you can resubmit later. This isn't a rejection type of scenario. We do want you to get a passing score before we allow you to enter in to the program, but that's for your own good. So let's look at the actual code now and see how we can submit the challenge. All right, so when you first get the code challenge directions, you should be directed to this page. Now, the video I'm actually making right now is the one that will be right here. So of course, we want to watch the video in full, and then you can click here to actually access the code challenge prompt. So I'm going to click here. It's going to redirect you to a GitHub page where it's going to give you the directions for the code challenge. So please read this in its entirety before you move on. I'm going to go through this just a little bit. For the most part, I want to actually show you the mechanics of how to submit the code challenge. So as you're going to see, there are 6 coding problems below. Each one of these problems is worth several points. In total, 20 points are available, and you must get 14 points. So you must get at least the number of problems below correct to total 14 points in order to pass. Now, read all this very carefully, but I'm gonna go through an example real quick. So problem 1 here, which is worth 4 points, says that we need to write a function called findSum that takes an array of numbers as an argument and finds the average of that array of numbers and returns that average as number. For example, if we were to invoke findSum with the array 2, 4, 6 in it, 6 plus 4 plus 2, the sum of that array is 12, which is what it should return. Now, each of these 6 problems, is asking us to write one function. Problem 1 says create a function called findSum. Problem 2 says create one called findFrequency, is palindrome, largest pair, remove parenth, score Scrabble. So there's 6 problems in total. Those are the 6 functions we need to write. Now here it says it's recommended that you use submission template.js as a starting point. So submission template.js, this file right here, also linked right here. If I click it, it looks like this. It's literally just those 6 functions defined. And then it says on each one of these that you don't forget to return a value. That's super important. Now, the reason why this is so important is because the code challenge will be automatically graded by some code that we've written. And it's looking for these 6 functions to be called these exact names. And it's looking for some very specific value to be returned. So you could technically solve the problem, but not pass the code challenge because you didn't follow the directions correctly. So make sure that you start off with some code that looks like this. Now, how do you actually submit the code challenge? That's what I'm gonna go through right now. You will need to use GitHub, but not in the tricky way that you might think. So I'm gonna go here to my own profile, which is just github.com/amhayslip, which is my user. So if you do not have a GitHub yet, which you probably don't, and that's okay, go ahead and go to github.com and create a new account. When you do, you should then be directed to a page that looks like this. This is my GitHub profile. There's a lot of stuff going on here, all of which you're gonna learn eventually. But for right now, what we wanna do is create our code so that we can submit it. For that reason, we're gonna go to this tab called repositories. Now, repository is essentially, you can think of this word as, a box. It's a location where we can store some code. So what we need you to do right now is to create a new repository. So I'm just gonna go over here and click new. And now I'm gonna name it something. You can name it whatever you want. Right here, I'm just gonna put in code challenge. By default, you don't need a description. It's gonna be public. That's totally fine. You don't need to click any of these. Just click the button that says create repository. And it's gonna turn for a minute. Then it's gonna give you this landing page. Now, Here, it's going to give you a ton of directions on the command line of how to get your code up and going. Don't worry about any of this stuff. You don't have to do any of this. What we're going to do next is click this little link that says creating a new file. So click creating a new file. And then it's going to ask you to name your new file. You can name it whatever you like. I'm just going to name it submission.js. You can name it banana. Now it doesn't make sense, so submission makes more sense to me. Make sure you put .js. It is a JavaScript file, and you're going to need that JavaScript file extension here. All right, now you can write some new code here if you want to start off with. I'm going to go back to the prompt. I'm going to go to the submission template that we gave you, and I'm just going to copy all of this code. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to paste it here. All right, so that's a good starting point. And then whenever you've got the code the way you want it, and you can do this several times, you can edit this as many times as you want. I'm going to click this button that says commit new file. And then what we're going to see here is I've got my username / code challenge. I have this file called submission.js. Now this is the file that you're going to edit as you code. So click submission.js. Now you can use whatever you want, right, to actually write your code. You can use a JavaScript file somewhere else. You can use Replit. You can write your code and test it somewhere else other than this. But when you're ready to submit it, go over here to this little edit file icon, click it, and you can change any of this code that you want to make it work the way that it's actually supposed to work. So you're basically going to write your code in each one of these things. Then when you're ready, you can click commit changes. Now I haven't actually made any changes to this file, so there's nothing to commit. I can do something like return hello world, which doesn't make this problem work, but it's a change. I can click commit changes. And as you're gonna see, now my file has been changed. All right, now whenever you get this file to the point of, all right, I think I'm good, I'm gonna pass this code challenge, or at least I'm going to attempt it, click this button called raw. What we're trying to do is get to a point where you can actually paste your code challenge. Now, when you click raw, it's gonna give you the raw code. Now, this raw code is what our program wants, and it's gonna test your raw code with this. So what we need now is to find this URL for our raw code, and I'm gonna do Command C or Control C, whatever, to copy this URL. Okay, now I can go back to this link that says submit your code challenge. I'm gonna click it, wants my email address, click OK, wants my first name, Aaron, and then the URL to your code is going to be that raw link. Again, to look at that real quick, and you can back the video up obviously, is go to your JS file, click raw, and then what you want is not the code, but the URL. And then you're gonna paste that URL right here, and then you're just gonna click submit. Now, in a couple minutes, you should get an email that's gonna tell you the result of your code challenge. All right, now I've gone into my email, and you can see here the code challenge results email. Now, mine got sent to spam, so make sure you check spam to make sure it's coming from admissions@Project Shift, which is coming from this strange, crazy Zapier email. So it says, Aaron, this is an automated email to let you know that you did not pass the code challenge. Now it says score needed to pass 70, right? Your score 0 points available were 0 because all of the code challenge test failed. So it's gonna give you each function. It shows you the tests that were run and gives you an ultimate score. All right, that's it for completing the code challenge. Do your best on this. Again, if you do not pass the first time, it just gives us an idea of where you should go next.